The objective of the lecture are the following. We will study the structure and function of cholesterol. We will discuss the biosynthesis and regulation of cholesterol, and how the synthesis is regulated, and also we'll talk about the synthesis of bile acids from cholesterol and the function of bile acid, and finally we will talk about the steroid hormones. Okay, so we start with the function of cholesterol. As you know, cholesterol is a lipid, and it is a component like other types of lipid, like the phospholipid and the glycolipid that we explained before. They are a component of the cell membrane, and they play an important function in the cell membrane because it gives the fluidity to the cell membrane. So it is also a precursor of bile acid. It's also a precursor of bile acid. So the bile acids are synthesized from cholesterol, and you know the function of bile acid. They play a role in they help the emulsification of lipids, so for the digestion of dietary fats. And also cholesterol is a precursor of all these steroid hormones, including corticosteroids, androgen, estrogen, aldosterone, etc. We'll talk about this at later on. And also cholesterol is a precursor of vitamin D, which is the vitamin that we consider it as a hormone and which is involved in calcium metabolism. And you know that calcium absorption intestinal absorption of calcium is stimulated by vitamin D. That's why you prescribe vitamin D with calcium supplement. So it is a water-insoluble molecule, and because it is water insoluble, so the organism cannot dissolve and cannot transport. So we need carriers for cholesterol, and these carriers are called lipoproteins. And Dr. Hannah next week will cover the lipoprotein metabolism, so she will discuss in detail the metabolism of these lipoprotein and their function. It has a very bad reputation, although it is essential to animal life. We mentioned that it is a component of the cell membrane. We mentioned that it is the precursor of bile acid, of vitamin D, of steroid hormones, but still it has a bad reputation because cholesterol is associated with the hardening of the artery, a disease called atherosclerosis, which is due to the formation of a plaque due to the accumulation of oxidized cholesterol. And this cholesterol is transported by the bad type, which is the LDL cholesterol that will accumulate on the arteries and causing atherosclerosis. This will result in increased blood pressure because there is narrowing of the arteries, and also this may lead to myocardial infarction. So that's why cholesterol has a bad reputation. So that's why we have to maintain a normal level of cholesterol. So your patient should maintain a level of cholesterol below 200 milligram per deciliter, especially if they have other risk factors such as family history, if they are smokers, if they have sedentary life. So all these you should take into consideration to avoid having atherosclerosis. Now, as for the structure of cholesterol, it contains 27 carbon. It is composed of 4 fused rings. Why fused? Because they are attached together. I will show you now. And the cholesterol has a peripheral side chain. It contains 1 double bond only. It has a low solubility in water, as we mentioned before, and we have it as 30% in the free. When I say free, it doesn't mean that it is bound to lipoprotein or not. No, the free, because we have 2 types of cholesterol. One is considered as free, and one is esterified to a fatty acid, and I will explain how. So the majority of cholesterol in the body is esterified through its OH group to a long-chain fatty acid, which form the cholesterol ester in the presence of oleic acid or linoleic acid. So this makes the molecule less soluble, so it's more hydrophobic. So look at the structure of cholesterol. It is composed of 27 carbons. This is the side chain of the cholesterol. 4 rings, A, B, C, D, fused, so they are attached. we have a double bond between carbon number 5 and carbon number 6, so only one double bond in the structure of cholesterol. And we have a hydroxyl group, one only hydroxyl group, that this is the only polar side of free cholesterol. So this OH can be esterified by a fatty acid to form cholesterol ester. So again, this is cholesterol with a free OH. So this is a free cholesterol. And this is a cholesterol ester that is abbreviated, you will see it in the lipoprotein metabolism next week as CE, cholesterol ester, where you have here a fatty acid esterified to the OH, which is attached to carbon number C. So two types of cholesterol, and again, they are both transported by lipoproteins. Now, how do we get cholesterol? We have what we call a hepatic pool of cholesterol that is derived from the synthesis, from de novo synthesis, from endogenous synthesis of cholesterol. So we do synthesize cholesterol. It is we have the stored cholesterol that form this pool, and also we can get cholesterol from the chylomicron remnant. Why chylomicron remnant? Chylomicron are the lipoprotein that transport dietary lipids, and once they are transported in the body to the adipocytes, where in the adipocyte the lipoprotein lipase will degrade triacylglycerol into glycerol and fatty acid. Dr. Hannah will explain this, but the remaining chylomicron, which contains the remaining dietary fat, including cholesterol, is called chylomicron remnant. So what we have in chylomicron remnant after the removal of triacylglycerol by lipoprotein lipase is cholesterol and very small percentage of phospholipid. So this is also another source of the pool of cholesterol, and also we can get them through the LDL receptor and LDL receptor mediated route that Dr. Hannah also will explain next week. So this is the pool in the liver. We obtain it from dietary by chylomicron remnant. We obtain it from synthesis, and we obtain it from lipoprotein. This is the good guy, HDL. Why is good? Because it is the type of lipoprotein that transports cholesterol, that collects cholesterol from extrahepatic tissues to the liver, where it is metabolized and converted to bile acids and bile salts. So that's why you have always to work on having high level of HDL and low level of LDL, because the HDL is the type of lipoprotein that protects your body from cholesterol, and the LDL is the type of lipoprotein cholesterol that may cause, if it is elevated, atherosclerosis. And this pool of cholesterol can be secreted to VLDL, where VLDL is later transformed into LDL. So again, next week you will study this. Or it will be stored in the bile, and when it accumulates in the bile, when it accumulates in the gallbladder, due to less solubilization by the bile, it will cause gallstone, and also we'll come to this later on today. Or it can be converted to bile acids and bile salts. And this is the only way of removing cholesterol from the body. It is by converting cholesterol to bile acids and bile salts. So let's talk about the biosynthesis of cholesterol. So we said it is synthesized in the liver, and the precursor is acetyl-CoA. You remember that the Rasul explained the synthesis of ketone bodies. And he said that acetyl-CoA, two acetyl-CoA will form acetoacetyl-CoA, then the acetoacetyl-CoA with a third acetyl-CoA will form hydroxy-methyl-glutarate-CoA. Have you studied this lecture?
Yes.
Okay. So, in the presence of synthase, we obtain HMG-CoA reductase. So same reactions we have here for cholesterol biosynthesis, but we'll see how these reactions will differ later on. So the acetyl-CoA is the precursor of cholesterol, and we get it from beta oxidation of fatty acid. We get it from dehydrogenation of pyruvate. You already studied this in the first semester. Or we can get it, you will study this later, from the oxidation of amino acid, and these amino acids are called ketogenic amino acids. Also, we need for the synthesis of cholesterol a reducing power. And this reducing power is obtained from NADPH, which is the reduced form of NADP+. And you know very well that where we can get this NADPH from, right? We explained the pentose phosphate pathway in the first semester, and we said that the function of this pathway is to give the reducing power for many biosynthetic reactions, such as cholesterol biosynthesis. In addition to acetyl-CoA and NADPH, for the synthesis of cholesterol, we need ATP. Okay, so 3 requirements: acetyl-CoA, NADPH, and ATP. So these are the major stages for the synthesis of cholesterol, and I want you to study only the major stages and not the details of the reaction. So I'll tell you what to study. So for stage 1, the acetyl-CoA is converted to mevalonate. Stage 2, mevalonate is converted to squalene. And the last stage, which is stage 3, squalene is converted to lanosterol, and then lanosterol to cholesterol. So from acetyl-CoA, we end up with cholesterol, and this synthesis again occurs in the liver. So the first synthesis, the first stage, we said that it is the synthesis of mevalonic acid. And the first 3 steps are identical to the reaction of the synthesis of ketone bodies, where we have 3 molecules of acetyl-CoA that will form 3-hydroxymethyl butyryl coenzyme A. But here, instead of having a liase enzyme like in ketone body synthesis, we have a reductase enzyme. So HMG-CoA reductase will act on HMG-CoA to give mevalonic acid. And this reaction again occurs in the liver. So let's see what's happening. Again, we have 2-acetyl coenzyme A. These 2-acetyl coenzyme A, in the presence of a thiolase enzyme, will form acetoacetyl-CoA. Then a third acetyl-CoA, in the presence of HMG-CoA synthase, with the release for sure of coenzyme A, will form 3-hydroxy 3-methyl butyryl coenzyme A. And this HMG-CoA will be reduced in the presence of HMG-CoA reductase to form mevalonic acid. Please study this reaction very well, because it is the rate-limiting step reaction for the synthesis of cholesterol. Because this enzyme, HMG-CoA reductase, will be your target if you want to decrease the level of cholesterol in the blood of your patients. Statins are a group of drugs that act on this enzyme to inhibit the synthesis of cholesterol by inhibiting the synthesis of mevalonic acid through this reaction. Okay, so please remember this reaction very well. Oh my God, sorry. So the stage 2, now we have the mevalonic acid. It will accept 3-phosphoryl group from ATP. So it will be phosphorylated, then it will be decarboxylated, and then isomerized to form dimethyl allyl pyrophosphate. In stage 3 also, we have the condensation of isoprene units. They will condense to form geranyl pyrophosphate. Then another geranyl pyrophosphate is added to produce farnesyl pyrophosphate. Then the 2-farnesyl pyrophosphate will form squalene. And in the stage 4, these isoprene units will form a cyclization reaction to form lanosterol and then cholesterol. Okay, it is complicated, but you will not study these reactions. Okay, so what I want you to know, how mevalonic acid is synthesized. This is the most important reaction in the biosynthesis of cholesterol. But you should know that this mevalonic acid, through many steps where ATP is required, so you need to know the requirements, then decarboxylated, then we have formation of metabolites And these metabolites in the presence of squalene synthase will form squalene, then squalene will be transformed into lamosterol, then cholesterol. So no details in this pathway, because you will not remember these reactions later on, and you don't need to know these reactions. There is no deficiency or disease related to these reactions. So the most important reaction in the biosynthesis of cholesterol is the formation of mevalonic acid, so the previous ones. Okay, so for these, just remember what are the metabolites. So you should know that isopentenyl pyrophosphate, dimethyl allyl pyrophosphate, genovalenol pyrophosphate, farnesyl pyrophosphate, and squalene are metabolites of cholesterol biosynthesis, but without knowing the steps of this reaction. Because even here, we did not include all the reactions. We have many reactions here to form cholesterol. Okay, but no need to memorize these reactions. What's important to know in the sense of cholesterol, we said the first, the major step, and in addition, you need to know the regulation. So this enzyme, as I said, HMG-CoA reductase, is the rate-limiting step enzyme reaction, and it can be regulated, we said, by statins, because statins are competitive inhibitor of this enzyme. And also, we can have as part of the regulation, covalent modification. And you know very well the covalent modification. You remember that the enzyme exists in two forms, phosphorylated and dephosphorylated. Some enzymes are active when they are phosphorylated, other enzymes are active when they are dephosphorylated. I want to ask you a question. Which hormone can stimulate the synthesis of cholesterol? Glucagon or insulin?
Insulin.
Insulin, you all agree insulin? Why? Because insulin is the hormone that stimulates the biosynthetic reaction, right? So this hormone usually causes the dephosphorylation of this enzyme. So dephosphorylation of this enzyme means activation. So what I'm trying to say here, that the phosphorylation of HMG-CoA reductase will inactivate the enzyme. So this enzyme, HMG-CoA reductase, is active when it is dephosphorylated, and it is inactive when it is phosphorylated. And the inactivation is through the cyclic AMP dependent pathway, which is stimulated by glucagon. So it is activated by insulin. Insulin stimulates the synthesis of cholesterol. Also, another way of control of this pathway is by degradation of the enzyme explained before. If you need this enzyme, you synthesize it, and the body needs it. So if not, so this enzyme won't be synthesized, and its half-life is of 3 hours. And this half-life depends on the cholesterol level. Finally, this synthesis also can be regulated by gene expression. So we can regulate the synthesis of cholesterol at the molecular level. Let's see how. So this is the cell. We said that in the synthesis of cholesterol, HMG-CoA is transformed into mevalonic acid, which is one of the metabolites in the synthesis of cholesterol. This reaction occurs in the presence of HMG-CoA reductase, and this enzyme is a protein, so it is translated from a messenger RNA, where a sterol binding protein will stimulate the gene expression in order to synthesize HMG-CoA reductase. If you have too much cholesterol, so your body is going to stop the formation of this sterol binding protein. It will inactivate the sterol binding protein, so the gene expression will not occur, and this will decrease the production of HMG-CoA reductase, and thus decrease the production of cholesterol. So we call it, this regulation is a regulation at the molecular level, because the cholesterol HMG-CoA reductase indirectly. So we need to control the level of cholesterol in the blood, because it is related to heart disease. And the disease is called atherosclerosis, and you may have other coronary heart disease. So if the level of cholesterol, Shabay, please. If the level of cholesterol is high, we call it hypercholesterolemia. This high level is directly related to heart disease. If you have low level of cholesterol in plasma, this is related to low mortality and low morbidity. So you have to make sure to maintain the level of cholesterol in the blood below 200 milligram per deciliter. Yes?
Since cholesterol inhibits the gene expression of the
Sorry?
gene, since the cholesterol inhibits the gene expression of the gene,
Yes.
can't we say that the cholesterol is an end product inhibitor?
Yeah, it is. It is. Now, let's take this case study. Guys, at the end, leave your mobile. Leave the WhatsApp. You will take much more time to study if you don't listen to the lecture, believe me. Okay, so we have here a 50-year-old male who had a family history of cardiovascular disease. Okay, family history, this is a risk factor. He was under strict dietary control, but the level of cholesterol in serum is 8 millimole per liter, which should be below 5. So it is high. We have hypercholesterolemia here. His physician put him on pravastatin for 3 months, and then he measured the level of cholesterol again, and the level of cholesterol in serum dropped to 5.5. So from 8 to 5.5 millimole per liter. So if the level of cholesterol is high in the blood of your patient, you ask them to do diet, you ask them to do exercise, to have a healthy lifestyle, to stop smoking, because smoking decreases the level of HDL, so causes the increase in the bad type of cholesterol. So if this doesn't work, you have to put them on statin. So what is pravastatin and how it works? So it is a partial inhibitor of the rate limiting step of the enzyme HMG-CoA reductase. It is part of the statin family. It is derived from pravastatin, which is isolated from Penicillium citrino. It has an enzyme inhibiting property because it competitively inhibits the enzyme HMG-CoA reductase. So this will lead to decrease in LDL cholesterol, and this will lead to increase in LDL receptors. So when the LDL receptors are elevated, there is more clearance of the bad cholesterol by exocytosis, and Dr. Hanna will explain the metabolism of lipoprotein next week. So this is HMG and this is pravastatin. To have a competitive inhibition, you know that we should have a similarity in the structure, because these two will compete for the active site of the enzyme. And pravastatin will bind to the active site, inhibiting the binding of the substrate, which is HMG, and this will lead to the inhibition of the formation of mevalonic acid, and thus the formation of cholesterol. So how cholesterol is degraded? Cholesterol cannot be broken down by mammalian cell. So then how we remove cholesterol from the body? It's either in the feces we have 1 gram per day, or, which is the major way of removing cholesterol from the body, to be converted into bile salts, which forms 50% of the total cholesterol, of how we get rid of cholesterol. And also we can get rid of cholesterol by bacterial reduction to transform it into neutral steroids, which can be eliminated by the feces. So we said that one way of getting rid of cholesterol, the major route of degrading cholesterol, is to form bile acid. What are bile acids? These are 2 examples of bile acids, and they differ in the position, in the number and position of the hydroxyl group. So here, for example, we have 3, and here we have 2. They all contain 24 carbons. At carbon number 24, we have carboxylic group. They have a sided chain, and as I said, they contain hydroxyl group. That's why they are considered as antipathic due to the presence of the carboxylic group and the polar group. So, what's the difference between bile acid, Shabab, please? Guys, what's the difference between bile acid and bile salts? A bile salt is a conjugated bile acid. What do we mean by conjugated? It means that please quiet. It means that the bile acid is conjugated to either glycine or taurine, and these two contain amino groups. See, glycine or taurine, they contain amino group, which will form here an amide linkage with the carboxylic group of the bile acid. So when the bile acid is conjugated to glycine or to choline, to glycine or to taurine, we have a conjugated bile salts. And let's take this example. This is cholic acid. When it's conjugated to glycine, we call it a glycocholic acid, which is a bile salt. And this is chenodeoxycholic acid, which is a bile acid. When it is conjugated to taurine, we call it taurochenodeoxycholic acid, which is a bile salt. So conjugated bile acids are called bile salts. So let's see how the synthesis of bile acid occurs. It starts with cholesterol in the presence of cholesterol hydroxylase enzyme, which is inhibited by cholic acid, which is the product, and stimulated by cholesterol, which is the substrate, to form the first primary bile. We call it primary, it's the first one, primary bile acid, which is cholic acid. What is the bile? We mentioned before in the previous lecture that the bile contains protein and lipids. And these lipids are a mixture of phospholipids and bile salts, which are the conjugated bile acid. And they are synthesized. The bile is synthesized in the liver and it is stored in the gallbladder. Okay? It is synthesized in the liver and stored in the gallbladder. So let's see how these primary and secondary. So primary and secondary, they differ in the number of OH. So different types of bile acids. Okay? When we say primary or secondary, different types of bile acid. So the cholesterol is converted to primary bile acids, and then it is conjugated by glycine or taurine to form primary bile salts. Then the primary bile salts are excreted in the bile duct in the intestine, where they are hydrolyzed, okay, to release glycine and taurine, and we obtain primary again bile acids, and then they are transformed into secondary bile acids, and the secondary bile acids are transported to the liver, back to the liver through the portal vein, where in the liver you have the conjugation of the secondary bile acid to form secondary bile salts. So what I'm trying to say here that the cholesterol is the precursor, the synthesis occurs in the liver, but these bile acids, bile salts are transported to the intestine, where you have the formation of the secondary bile acid, but both primary and secondary are conjugated in the liver to form primary and secondary bile salts. Clear? Yes? So, again, we need to know the difference between bile acid and bile salts. This is a gallbladder with stones, so we call it gallstones, or the condition is called polylithiasis. It's due to deficiency in bile salts. The bile salts cannot solubilize cholesterol, so cholesterol will accumulate and form stones. So these stones are made up of cholesterol. These stones can be big or small. Big ones are cause inflammation of the gallbladder, and the small ones, if you have small like this one, they may pass in the bile duct and they may cause obstruction of the bile duct. So that's why the only solution is to do cholecystectomy. Now, what causes the gallstone? I said that when you have decreased solubilization of cholesterol, so cholesterol will accumulate and form the stone. And also, if you are taking a drug such as the fibrates, these fibrates can cause this condition. They are drugs that are given to decrease the level of lipid for hyperlipidemia. So the gallstones, the only solution for gallstone is to do cholecystectomy, to remove the gallbladder. There is no side effect of the surgery. You know, it's an organ that only stores the big bile. But the bile is still synthesized in the liver, and it is excreted to the intestine, where it helps in the where it facilitates the digestion of lipid. Now, the patient having this surgery, they may experience some pain at the beginning, and they may have some diarrhea, because when they eat fat, the bile will be excreted to the intestine without being stored in the gallbladder. Is the precursor of steroid hormone? Please, just give me 10 minutes. 10 minutes and we'll finish. So, it's the precursor of steroid hormones. Please, if you want to leave, please leave. خلاص, we took the attendance, leave. We have glucocorticoids. The major glucocorticoid is cortisol, and it's called glucocorticoids because it affects the glucose metabolism and it increases glucose in blood. So that's why you should not prescribe cortisol to your patient if they are diabetic. Okay, you have to be careful. The mineralocorticoids, including the aldosterone, which is the hormone that regulates the level of sodium potassium. It increases sodium and decreases potassium. You know how, right? By increasing sodium reabsorption and increasing potassium excretion. So the function of aldosterone is to increase sodium and decrease potassium. And we have the sexual hormones, including androgen, which is testosterone, estrogen, estradiol, and estrone, and progestogen, which is also known progestin, which is progesterone. So how these hormones are synthesized? The main precursor again is cholesterol, and the synthesis is called steroidogenesis. The synthesis occurs in the mitochondria and the endoplasmic reticulum of steroidogenic tissues. When I say steroidogenic tissues, it means that tissues requiring the synthesis of steroids, such as the adrenal gland, for example, the ovaries, the testes, all these organs, we have synthesis of steroid hormones. So the rate limiting step in the synthesis of steroid hormones is the transport of cholesterol from the cytoplasm to the mitochondria. So to start the synthesis, we need to transport this cholesterol into the mitochondria, and this transport is carried out by a protein called steroidogenic acute regulatory protein, abbreviated as TAR. So this protein will play a role to transport the cholesterol in the mitochondria where the reaction of the synthesis occurs. So from cholesterol, we have synthesis of progesterone, and then progesterone is transformed into testosterone, and then testosterone into estradiol or estrogen. Progesterone also can be transformed into cortisol or into aldosterone. So these are the major reactions for the synthesis of steroid hormones. So you need to know which one is synthesized first, and you need to know how cortisol is obtained without going into details of the reaction. And you don't need to know all these details, just the previous one. So, but why I put this? Because I included this slide to know that, okay, these are the steps that are shown in the previous slide, but you have deficiency of these enzymes that are labeled here in red. For example, let's take the example of deficiency in hydroxysteroid dehydrogenase enzyme. If this enzyme is deficient, so there is no glucocorticoid, no mineralocorticoid, and so this will lead to accumulation of these hormones. And if this enzyme is deficient, it will affect this pathway. If this enzyme is deficient, it will affect that pathway. So no need to know all the details, but I want you to know, just to know, deficiency in one or more of the enzyme of the steroidogenesis will cause a group of disorders called congenital adrenal hyperplasia. So congenital adrenal hyperplasia is caused by deficiency in the enzyme of the steroid hormone synthesis from cholesterol. Now, I added some slides that you are not requested to study. These slides will discuss the cortisol, how it's produced. This is mainly physiology, actually, and how it's regulated, aldosterone, androgens, and where these hormones are synthesized, for example, aldosterone and cortisol in the adrenal cortex, the estrogen and progesterone in the ovaries, and the testosterone in the testes. This is just to have an idea about the function of this hormone, but this is not part of the biochemistry. You will take this in the physiology, in other courses in pathology also they give you the hormones. Okay? Do you have a question?